Hope and I decided to build a tiny home for a homeless guy. But we didn't have unlimited funds, so we came up with the idea of building the tiniest tiny home that would be super lightweight that you could pull with a bike. So we went to Lowe's, picked out a bunch of stuff and paid with money, then went to a used bike shop and picked up this little bike so we can use the wheels for the trailer. Building a tiny home out of 2x4s and plywood wasn't going to cut it because a bicycle just can't handle that much weight. After doing some research, I found out you can use foam for most of it to keep it nice and lightweight. So I started off by cutting some 2x4s because these will work as a frame for the trailer. And once I had all my pieces cut out, I started to take off the tires from the bike that we purchased. The front tire was a breeze to take off, but the back tire took a little more time because it was rusted. And the tires was the only thing we needed off the bike, so it was pretty straightforward. And a little flippity flip, but now that the tires are taken off and the frame is cut out, I put all the pieces out on the ground to see how it would look. The outside of the trailer is going to be made out of 2x4s, and the inside is going to be made out of 2x2 inch slats. This way it'll be sturdy, but it'll be really lightweight so you can pedal this thing up and down hills with no problem. We pre-drilled the 2x4s, then screwed them together using 1.5 inch decking screws. And don't get on me too much for working on the ground, guys. I live out of my camper van and I only have limited resources and I'm doing my best. But the next step was to evenly space out the 2x2 inch wooden support slats, then pre-drill the holes before screwing it in. I spaced out the support slats 10 inches apart because the floor is going to be made out of insulation and I wanted to make sure that it has enough support. And again, I'm using 1.5 inch decking screws to screw the whole frame together. And just how I read online, this thing is super lightweight. I don't think anyone's going to have trouble riding this thing up and down hills. But while I take a water break, be sure to click that subscribe button if you support the channel. But now that I'm hydrated and the bike frame is put together, I had to figure out a way to connect the wheels to the frame. So I picked up some sheet metal, cut it into 4 pieces with my metal grinder, and traced the wheel fork from the old bike to get the measurement I need so I can notch it out. Until it basically looked like this, and my favorite part about using the metal grinder is that I was using the electricity from the solar panels of my camper van the entire time. But I then measured and screwed in the metal brackets into the frame, which was pretty challenging to do because we had to make sure the metal brackets were perfectly centered, if not the wheel won't fit properly. And before moving on to the other side, we gave it a quick test to make sure it fit properly, and thank God it did. But then we moved on and did the exact same thing on the other side, and at this point I wish I had a couple of sawhorses to keep this thing off the ground because my back was killing me. I ended up using 1 inch pocket hole screws to screw in the metal brackets because the 1.5 inch decking screws were just way too long and they would go right through the wood. And now that the frame is put together and the metal brackets are put on, it was time to install the wheels. I used the same nuts that the wheels came with and screwed them together using a 15mm socket. Then gave the trailer its official first test drive and ran around the parking lot like a horse carrying a chariot, but don't judge me. But now that the trailer passed my chariot test, it was time to start building the walls, ceiling, and floor. For the walls, we're using 4x8 sheets of foam board from Owens, and you can find us at your Home Depot or Lowe's. We're cutting the walls out to be 6 feet long and 3 feet tall because that's the size of the trailer. And to cut it, you basically use a box cutter, then snap the back of it, and it just pops off. Then I took the existing wall that I already cut out, put it over a new sheet, and cut that out as well so I can have 2 walls. And when I first read that you can use foam board to build micro trailers, it completely blew my mind because I didn't think it would be structural enough, but after doing a little more research, it makes complete sense because it'll make sure that the trailer is nice and lightweight. So we then started to screw in the 3 inch foam walls into the trailer using big head screws to make sure that it grips the foam. We installed the walls and the floor using 3 inch foam, and the roof was made out of 2 inch foam. And once the walls and the floor was put together, I gave it a little test to make sure it can hold my weight. Then we measured out the roof,